So thank you, Siobhan Spain and Beau Kenyon, for joining us today. And first off, can you just tell us who you are, where you are today, and why you showed up today to talk about arts and the importance of arts entrepreneurship and supporting many different artists here in New York?
Well, I'll start off with that. I'm Siobhan. I run Mainframe Studios, and this past year we've had some really great positive stories to tell, one of which is we finished another floor. So we have 4 of our 5 floors done. We added 58 more art studio built spaces. And so we have 131 non-residential workspaces in downtown Des Moines, the majority of which is rented by small businesses, creative professionals, contractors, fine artists, and starting their own businesses. So it's very relatable in that sense to the startup stories. So I'm happy to be here.
I would have to say I'm very happy to be collaborating with Siobhan Spain. I'm happy you're here too. My name is Beau Kenyon. I'm a composer and an arts advocate based in Des Moines, Iowa, and Boston, Massachusetts. Right now I'm calling from Boston. And the work that I do is very much situated in the intersection of research and practice, and very much disciplinary, very much collaborative, and also seeking cross-institutional partnerships both in and outside of the arts to help build a stronger arts ecosystem.
So thank you guys for both joining. And I guess when you were younger, did you ever think you would be leading kind of whole arts community, lifting them up, or even just being an artist? What did you guys imagine you would be when you were growing up?
You know, I had a fun conversation a couple years ago with a local artist, and he runs Slaughterhouse, and he goes by Satirist Jeering and many other names. And we were talking about our first memory as a child of what we took pride in and did on our own. And he said, look back to that and you're surprised what career you go into, because he realized he did haunted houses when he was young. And here he is doing Slaughterhouse in downtown Des Moines with Slipknot and whatnot. And it's just like so suiting. And then it made me think about that. And I'm like, you know what? I actually envisioned in 5th grade opening basically a creative space for artists in the town I was living in. So I was surrounded by artists. I still am in families. So art was kind of like second nature. But I thought that was a really great exercise that he proposed.
Well, I mean, I grew up in a family that very much prioritized music and arts. I mean, I started playing piano when I was about 4, and I don't know if I ever really thought that I was going to be a musician and composer until, I want to say probably around 16, 17, and that's when I decided I wanted to go to Berklee College of Music. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath. It's interesting because right now, I just finished this lecture at Boston Conservatory, Berklee College of Music, and I had just finished my freshman year here 20 years ago. And so it's interesting to be back here now, speaking to and talking about the process, my approach to collaboration, my approach to public artwork, and where I'm situated as a composer, and to be thinking about that in this sort of way, and now doing an interview that's based in Des Moines, in my home state, it feels like a very impactful narrative to me as an arts advocate, as an arts leader, and also as a composer. And so, you know, I do not come from a family of professional musicians. In fact, I come from a family of attorneys. You know, my dad, my uncles, my grandfather, sister, cousins, they're all lawyers. So I think a lot about, you know, how do we create a society or an infrastructure that creates community, that promotes fairness, that promotes equity and advocacy. And while that was part of our conversation growing up at the dinner table, I definitely took a very specific pathway for art and towards education and curiosity-based education and curiosity-based art, really believing that that is a pathway towards healing and a pathway towards greater compassion and greater empathy, really meaningful connection. And so, while I didn't necessarily think as a child, I'll grow up and be an artist and do this, those were part of the things that I have been thinking about, over my lifetime. And so it's just interesting to be reflecting in this capacity right here, right now at this time. So thank you for asking it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
I'm glad you brought up that curiosity, like curiosity-led education, because actually that connected to Siobhan, and I've been hosting a lot of curiosity conversations. So I'm a huge advocate for the curiosity and the curious mind. Across no matter if you're an artist, creative, or an attorney. So but I appreciate that call out to curiosity. So I'm kind of curious, going right into there's the whole myth of the starving artist, and I'm curious for both sides of you. I know Siobhan, you come from a family of artists, and then and even Beau comes from a family of attorneys. Did you guys ever take on that belief? Because it's a huge piece to a lot of artists. It's they don't necessarily. It's a harder challenge to overcome. So I'm curious.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's something that's been, in our society of thinking about artists over time. Artists do play a specific role in our community, which I'm really grateful for. They're very resourceful. They're rooted in our community and connected to our community. Oftentimes, and they're also resourceful, so they'll make do, which is one of those things that feeds that curiosity, because they're working with the resources that they have right in front of them. But I really do want to break down that myth of the starving artist, even though it's very true. I want that to change. And I want, I think Mainframe Studios hopefully is helping move the needle in that way of recognizing artists as these real game changers in our community, really influencing the betterment of our community. But so we want to put more attention on them as a resource that should be funded, that should be engaged with more, so they're not. And it doesn't take much is the thing. What I found at Mainframe is it doesn't take millions of dollars, it doesn't take thousands of dollars sometimes to get the spark that is in an artist to grow so much bigger and really give back in a huge way. So yes, I think I want to, it's still true. I struggle with it because yes, there is that fact. They're not part of the startup story normally. They're not included in thinking of as a business or leaders. All those things need to shift because they're CEOs of their own world and they're CEOs of our community. So they do struggle. We do need to give them more resources. We do need to lift them up more. But it's just so many old holdovers about stereotypes of artists. We stick them in old crappy buildings and then we kick them out of old crappy buildings because that building should be higher and better use. Well, the higher and better use is artists. We should find a way to keep them in our community and have them have resources to give back. So yes, it's evolving, I hope, with help.
that I was examining what my professors, let's say, and mentors were supporting their artistry, that they were full-time professors, which is a full-time job, while trying to publish articles in musicology, while trying to publish books in music theory, while trying to publish and have performances of their new creative works. And so I needed to take a break after grad school just to pursue other ways in which I could view the world as a composer, which is very much a creative musical pursuit. And so I took time to do music cognition research at Children's Hospital, and I led or co-led and authored a study in executive function and music to understand how our brain understands music and music perception. And that fed into my experience as a human, but also my creative experience as a composer. Meanwhile, developed a whole other career in curiosity-driven education and interdisciplinary curriculum and transdisciplinary curriculum, thinking about how do we learn as humans and how can we best teach as humans, which also feeds into my work as a public artist and as a composer. So that is very fundamental to like how I lead professional development for artists, thinking like, where is your alignment in your values and your skill sets so that it doesn't feel like you're putting out 1,000 fires and working full time and trying to be creative. So trying to align that is really important. But also I totally agree with Siobhan that this is the perception that an artist need to be starving and to be a martyr for their art is so counterproductive to being in a space where you can be free to create, but also thinking that the only way an artist can make money is to commodify the end product of their art is also detrimental to the overall arts ecosystem. It's not how can we teach artists to be better businessmen and women and sell whatever they can for their art. It's how do we help teach our government and our society to value the process of art making, the collaboration that's involved, but also the visioning and also the growth mindset that is necessary to a thriving community, period. And that comes from the arts.
Mhm.
And that support comes from funding, it comes from accessible funding, and it comes from a city that sees value in that and helps to provide tangible financial support so that can happen. And that's my soapbox.
And another, yes. And I'll add to it, part of the whole mission for Mainframe Studios is to provide permanent, affordable workspace to artists of all disciplines. And I think we are wanting to make sure that artists never get priced out of downtown Des Moines, making sure that infrastructure for the individual artist is just as important as our world-class art center, our performing arts center, our opera, our arts festival, and taking that factor of rent out of the equation of risk. Like I was talking about, the little things can really make a big difference. Mm-hmm. Artists can pay as little as $1 a square foot per month to be part of a community that understands them, that speaks their language, that wants to collaborate with them, and also have a space that's gorgeous and is made for them. It does remind me of a startup kind of sensibility because, we want to take them seriously so they take themselves seriously. Mm-hmm. I want a higher bar for every artist in Des Moines. And I think we've got to lead by example and show them that they matter. We care about them. We want them engaged in our community and want them an undeniable part of our fabric of our economy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know what? That's all they are wanting that. They're waiting for it. They want that bar to reach. And I think it's up to us as community leaders to give them that. And we're going to be paid back 1,000 times and more if we step up to the plate a little more. And every community has artists. This can happen in any community. They're undervalued. It's time to like switch that up.
Siobhan, you're the very best. And like the thing is that like it's very much quality of life, right? It's generating something that it has such. It's more of a qualitative metric. It's not the dollars and cents metric. It's not the how many audience members, how many seats did you sell metric. It's the metric of, is this a good city to live in? Is this a vibrant city? And it's that quality of life that the arts are really able to generate, and it's explosive, it's expansive. And I love that when you said, Siobhan, sort of not just affordable space, but affordable space that is beautiful, affordable space that people actually want to be in, because that's huge. And what she's doing is creating this micro community of artists where this organic collaboration can happen. And it's, you walk in and the energy just feels beautiful. You want to be in that space. And that's respectful to the artist. It's the artist not only affordable space, but affordable space with dignity and vision for the future. I can't say enough good things about Mainframe and Siobhan, honestly. I can't.
I agree. And to say, I'm actually at Gravitate today downtown, and there's a beautiful mural right across the street that says Greater Des Moines. And so you're really accurate in saying like it does bring the vibrancy of just walking. I mean, to see public art, it makes you kind of feel loved even in a small way. So glad you brought up that point. And kind of going into the next thing. So I know there was like an assessment survey done in 2019, put on by the Des Moines Arts Festival in the Bravo, Greater Des Moines. And I was kind of looking into this right before jumping on here. And it was kind of alarming that like 70% of the surveyed artists, which I think surveyed 300, make less than $10,000 in gross income annually. And like, so Siobhan having affordable rent space, I think that's like a huge check mark, because it does provide some sort of like professional space to create. But then I know in that there was a huge identifying, there's this need for more professional development or just training. And so Beau, you talked about how you need to do a better job aligning the artist's value and their skill set and into how they can perform their art. And so can you particularly kind of dive into the Iowa Creative Incubator and even a lot of different collaborations you've been part of?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I would say if I could start just a little bit before the incubator, if that's okay, but I'll try to keep it succinct for everybody here. I didn't realize how fortunate I was to be a Creative City grantee from New England Foundation for the Arts. And what that was, I had submitted a proposal to do public artwork here in Boston. And then also not only was it, it was funded and it was funded well, but also embedded in that was some professional development for me. So not only the program, but also it was set up in a cohort structure. So I got to know some of the other public artists, and also a fundamental part of that program was to partner and to seek partnership with communities and through community-based organizations. And so with that program, I had to find and secure those community partners before submitting my application and my proposal to be considered as a fellow. In talking with Siobhan, we're talking about how can we build a program to really show businesses and communities the value of working with an artist, or the value of artists doing creative projects out in the community. And rather than doing a marketing campaign about artists in general, we decided to move forward with this very similar model, but actually create an incubator space where artists got to professional development from me and from Siobhan, and then we enlisted other folks like Jennifer Drinkwater from over at Iowa State Extension, and she's also a tenured professor over at Iowa State University, but also Emmett Phillips Jr. from Oak Ridge neighborhood. Others were involved as well. John Busby was a huge support. Pat Bodie was a huge support. But like, how can we provide support to artists to create a strategic plan for a creative project that also involved at least one, if not multiple, community partners, and then execute on that creative piece. And so embedded in this was very, very personalized from artist to artist. I offered many hours of coaching sessions individually, but then also set up some workshop times for us to congregate as a cohort. Ideally, we would do this in person, but of course over Zoom in 2020 and now still into 2021, we're really gathering over Zoom still to create a micro community of artists who are doing similar types of work, but with different folks to offer feedback and mutual support, and then also directed individualized support, helping to fill in gaps, whether it's creating a business model to creating a marketing strategy, or thinking about stakeholdership, not just as somebody who gave you money, so you have to prove to them that they got their money's worth, right? But stakeholdership as partnership and mission alignment and generating a larger audience and support system for your work. And so that felt really important. Meanwhile, I also just finished a 10-week program for the Artist Inc. program that was housed under Stephen King and the Arts Festival, supported by Bravo, supported by the Iowa Arts Council. And that's another really great model where it's a little bit more module. It's a little bit more, thinking first and foremost about what drives you as an artist and how you evaluate success, and then start thinking about these different things. So it would be a great starting place for a lot of artists, but I'm finding that just because the support and the professional development didn't exist here, it doesn't mean that our artists haven't been sort of figuring it out themselves. Every artist that I've met here has been so talented and so thoughtful and so intelligent that, like, once we sit down, I realize they know a lot. And that's why the individualized approach is so important, because you can respond to what they already know rather than just assuming that because it didn't exist here, they know nothing, which is, again, it's not a very respectful way to begin with artists, I feel like.
Can you specifically talk about the cohort that went through the Iowa Creative Incubator and, what kind of surprised you about the program? About the incubator? In a good way, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I can. I feel like I've been taking up a lot of space, but I would love to hear Siobhan as well. Just briefly, I could say, the artists, there are 5 artists. Siobhan and I talked when we did the call for artists that it was very important, whenever you're creating something new, period, especially if you're creating something new in the arts and culture sector, it is important to think about accessibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion as a fundamental part of that program. If you're not thinking about it when you're building something new, I believe you're doing a disservice to the overall sector. And so we of course took that as an opportunity to make sure that our application was accessible. And what that means, there's of course no fee to apply. We weren't requiring a resume or a requirement that artists have an undergraduate degree or an MFA or a terminal degree in any sense. And we also weren't including that you had to have any sort of either academic showing or gallery installation that can sometimes be very, inaccessible to some artists. We also made it a priority to encourage BIPOC artists to apply and reaching out to partners within different communities to make sure that this was being distributed in a very comprehensive way. And so our fellows were Cameron Gray, DK, Deanna Michael Kelly, and Chrissy Jensen, Amanda Tate, and Jill Wells. And I would say it was surprising to me how insecure some of them were, because these are artists who are phenomenal in their craft, but also incredibly thoughtful incredibly hardworking, incredibly connected to their own friends, family, community, but also immediately, like over this 4-week program or 4-month program, really bonded so deeply with each other in a way that I couldn't be happier. Like they're just amazing. They're amazing human beings and amazing artists. So I feel very fortunate to have been working with them. Siobhan, did you have more?
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, it was eye-opening in a lot of ways, like how we were on the right track. And I think, you know, trying something new like this during COVID was such good timing too, because of everything was so unpredictable. A lot of people uprooted, and this program really helped bring their feet to the ground and together in a way that was so productive. I wanted something tangible. I wanted, like, if we were able to help one artist during COVID, it's better than trying to like do a marketing campaign to try to convince businesses that they should care more about working with artists. And, you know, we got both, and it's so wonderful. I think we are working on these video interviews with the artists, to really start promoting them out in the world now, so that you know what we're talking about, that we're not the only ones that know these artists, but really introducing them to the greater community. They're, like Beau said, they are very hardworking, but their projects are really heartfelt. They come from such an authentic place from their own experience. It was so heartwarming. When we were filming these interviews, I was getting teary-eyed. I mean, it was just so awesome to know that these people are in our community and they care about our community, and they care enough to do something about it. And a lot of it's on their own volition. Yeah. It's not because, you know, somebody put out an RFP and they're replying to it. It's like, this is their own personal RFP that they're responding to and making happen no matter what. And I just think it's really important that they get the attention due. And I'll be I'll be happy when the community understands what I'm talking about when we start putting it out in the community more. Be fun to show them off.
Yeah.
They deserve it.
Yes.
So Siobhan, can you specifically say, like, will there be another program? And you know, what does the success look like for you in this incubator?
Yeah, so, you know, Mainframe has a lot of great things going for it. And one is being able to say yes. I love being nimble. I love have the flexibility to be responsive. You know, we don't really do a lot of programming here. We really make room for artists in the community to do programming here. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, Hoover High School is coming through today to scope out the space for being part of one of our first Fridays to do a Black Youth Art Expo.
Okay.
You know, they came to us and we're able to say, yes, please come, try it out, see how it feels. We want to see what it looks like. The incubator is kind of the same, like, hey, we can't do our first Fridays. What can we do? Mm-hmm. So I think being able to say yes to people that don't normally hear that, a lot of established artists get to hear that, but not a lot of emerging. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is part of the formula that we're able to help out the community in any way we can. So I do think there is a future for sure, to answer that question finally. There's so much interest now that we're talking about it, and we're going to do a live event that will be screened during Art Week, mm-hmm. in conversation with the incubator fellows. It proved so worth doing again. And I think if we can get the right support for continuing it, mm-hmm. we would really change the lives of a lot of mm-hmm. artists and really show that the community has their back and they have good ideas and they're worth investing in.
Yeah. And so if someone's listening right now, which I hope someone is, Can you vocalize, what that support looks like?
Yeah, so financial support, period. It's really simple. We have flexibility in our time that we can give. The idea is that it has its own legs eventually.
Yep.
Out of Mainframe. We always want to be a partner in it, but I would love for it to have a life of its own. So financially supporting, the artist stipends, so they can get paid for their time for this professional development.
Yep.
Financial support to do these mini documentaries that really show off their work in the end and can help them gather support for their own projects, because that's part of it. It's like, we're not going to do it all for you. Like, we're going to get you some stable ground, but get used to like being out in the community and asking and making those partnerships that really can make your projects happen. And also the professional development that Beau brings and a lot of other people in the community that can help contribute that. So it is a financial ask. Again, it's surprisingly not a lot to make a lot of impact in our community.
Awesome. All right. So I'm curious, Siobhan, if you can kind of speak to Mainframe and I always think success leaves clues. And so finding, who are some more of the mid-career artists that come to mind that you have seen be successful. And if you can kind of talk about what do you think are some of the strategies that has made them successful? I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
You are. Love that. Success leaves clues. I like that. We have so many different levels of artists here, and it's by design. We're really intentional about the artists that we bring in. We have a huge wait list. We love all the ones that we see come through. We want a mix of mediums. We want a mix of talent. We want a mix of skill level and background and age and ethnicity and race. I mean, the greater mix, the better, because that cross-pollination is so exciting. So the ones that are most, let's say at the top of their game, their art is their life. We have a storyboard artist that I think the partnership has promoted. I mean, shown out to the community that he works with Warner Brothers, but he's here in Des Moines. He's like 100% committed. He lives, breathes, works it day in and day out. He'll pull all-nighters if he has to. Other ones are, the album cover artists. They live and breathe art like their life depends on it. And you know what? They made a career out of it. And I think the clue of success is following your passion. That's the best thing any of us can do, whether you're a lawyer or not. And these artists, if they are able to have enough confidence to follow their passion and follow through with those visions they have for their art, even though maybe it doesn't make sense at the time, I think that is a path to success. Because if you're working off your passion, that's it, right? You'll make it work. You'll find ways to make it work. You'll surprise people. You'll connect with the people that relate to you. And I think merging is testing avenues out. Some artists really want to test out the online market, for instance. Maybe they'd be able to be more nimble there. I am definitely a huge advocate of there's not one way. There's not one type of artist. There's not one type of way to be an artist. You can be a hermit and hide in your studio and never say hi to them. That's okay too. You don't have to know how to market yourself. But you know what? We need more agencies for art, agents for art. And that's what I see myself as, making sure that the people that are, want to work a lot of different ways, know that they have resources no matter what. And we can help connect them to them, the applicable ones.
Siobhan, I love hearing you talk about this. And I am so happy to hear, you sort of ending on that particular note, because I would say, success really looks like the opportunity for artists to have the freedom for themselves to define what success is, but not just freedom to define success, but also the resources and the, again, professional development or network to understand all the different ways they could define success, like whether it's, understanding and connecting with, specific artists where they can learn what that could mean for them, right? Because we don't all necessarily intrinsically know what success means for us and that's why it's so important to have a network and support. And I think through those two things, and then also valuing, I think those two things, network and support is both in the form of professional development, but also funds and funding and resources. And I feel like that helps to better understand what that success really looks like. I mean, that's the first question that I ask artists in any type of workshop that I'm leading, is for them to really think about how they want to spend their time. Do they want to align their different work practices, or do they want to is $10,000 what they're looking for a year? I don't think that is for a lot of them, but to be able to have the choice and the resources to know that if they want it to only be $10,000 a year for a side practice, that's okay. No one's judging them that, but the fact that that's really what was it? What was the metric? 80% of artists are earning $10,000 or less. I have a hard time believing that 80% of artists would choose that intentionally as their annual salary, right? So, but some might.
That's a good point. Yeah, some might. But you know what? This going back to that starving artist question, when you think of startups and maybe what people associate with that term, they are invested. They're starving startups, in the tech world, but they have people backing them. Why is it so hard to imagine backing artists? We haven't made that connection, and I want to. Like, let's back them and see what happens. The risk is so low.
Yeah.
When you're talking about somebody happy with or can do with $10,000,
oh, I know.
We're talking like, give them $10,000, see what can they make happen. I guarantee. I've been amazed. I have 130 studios. I'm amazed by every single one of them. I wish I could tell you about every single one of them, and I will. You can just call me up. But they won't disappoint. I guarantee you.
I think that kind of alludes to my next conversation as we wrap up and talking about the community. So I'm really glad, Siobhan, you brought up that point. Like, how progressive would it be if we just gave $10,000 as an investment to artists, just like that happens, a startup in tech. And so what are some ideas that would be on your wish list to really set the bar to the next level for the arts community here in Des Moines? I think Mainframe, I think what you guys have done there, I think there are a number of great organizations that are supporting the arts, but what are the next things to really set the bar high?
Yeah, I think we need to diversify the options because Mainframe can't be the only one.
Yep.
The Arts Council Fellowship can't be the only one. We're surrounded, like, Minnesota is the highest supported for the arts, and we're one of the lowest in the nation. They have a lot of options for artists. We just need to build those options. I'm curious with Beau being back in Boston, and I want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
Like maybe that plane trip or the trip back there and being around your historical like starting point, what you'd say.
And I feel like I'm a little bit of a broken record, but I feel like, access to funding is huge. And I know that, to agree with Siobhan, that there can't just be an annual fellow from the Iowa Arts Council with a grant of $10,000, which, to be super frank, to do an art project, or to do any sort of public work or any sort of project that involves multiple people on your team to get something done, $10,000 is not a lot of money to do the level of art that our artists are able to do and have the skills to do and the bandwidth to do. You can't, I mean, Siobhan said earlier today that we're astounded by what can be done and what artists can do with $10,000. However, it's not enough. And the fact that it's only once a year is not enough, or that it's only coming from certain places. So we need direct lines for funding for individual artists. We need we need an infrastructure that supports that, and to teach and to provide that community. We also very much need what I'm hoping for, big picture, long-term goals, and is incrementally shifting how people in the state of Iowa value art and artists. Say that you value it is not enough, and that to show that you value it means that you're not saying, okay, well, you can volunteer your time and have free space to do your work. That's fine. It's an okay starting point, but we have people in our community who very much financially and support the arts, or support the arts through very intentional time and partnership. I just think that there needs to be more advocacy for getting larger amounts of money to the individual artists themselves. And that's sort of what our hope is with projects like the incubator, to show and to provide a proof of concept that to collaborate with an artist on a project that the artist is conceiving of is valuable and feeds our community in a really comprehensive and vibrant and beautiful way. And to, rather than talk about facts and figures, they're actually showing the value. And that's my biggest hope, is that there's unfortunately sort of a scarcity mindset that is not seeing not just the vision of what could be, but how to get there, and to enlist the support of the people who, or the companies who, or the foundations who could support that in really meaningful ways. And I think, having those conversations from a point of curiosity and shared vision is really very important, that we all get on the same page with us, because I think it can happen.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, Beau, I love your perspective from your experience. It's so helpful to have that. I think there's just so many different ways. There's so many different avenues, just like that diversity aspect. We need more options. But just think about, if you're a business owner, like think about art on your walls. You could think about, if you're a retailer, like, hey, I'm gonna go peruse our art list on Mainframe and see whose work I can maybe carry in my place. So when I talk about agents for art, they come in all forms. It comes in media. No one's like, Diana, we've talked before, is that how can we be on the radar of the nation when we don't put it out there for them to find? There's no app for talking about arts, lifting them up. We just need to do a better job of that, because how can we be taken seriously as arts city when we don't? Where do you see it besides coming down to Mainframe? Is it, DSM magazine does a wonderful job. Thank God they're there. We just need more people recognizing that there's stories to be told. There's artists to engage with in many ways through their work. Demonstrations, hands-on yourself workshops, team building. I can run down the list. There's a lot of ways. And just go to a website and pick an artist, call them, and say, what can we do?
Just really love. I also who does a really great job, I think, when they came to Des Moines, was the Surety Hotel and the Mulberry Street Tavern. They're a hospitality group. No matter what city they go into, when they're outfitting art in the rooms or in the lobbies or in the restaurant, they're using local artists, and they don't have to, but they do, like local artists, local coffee roasters, local breweries. And that's, a type of percent for art program. And a lot of other cities will have a percent for art program where no matter what kind of new building you're building, a percentage you need to work into a percentage of your building and operational budget artwork. And that art could look in a lot of different ways. But by having that requirement, but also providing resources, right? So at one point, a couple of years ago, I helped build a strategy plan and outline for how to actually implement a percent for art program. So you're not just, you're required for spending X percent of your budget on work, but also educating the company who's building a new structure, educating them on, well, how would you go about leading an RFQ process? Who are the local arts leaders like Siobhan Spain that you would reach out to? How do you build a jury or a panel who could help you select that artwork so that you're not just willy-nilly randomly, contacting an artist, which that's great too. But I think there's so many artists out there who are capable, willing, and hungry to do more and have a greater impact and feel connected to their city, that to have some infrastructure around it as well would be so powerful. And I think people would be responsive to it. I don't know if those kinds of conversations are happening, but they could be, and they should be.
Well, I think it sounds like pretty much we all need to be agents. And I like, Siobhan, how you brought that up. You don't actually have to be a formal,
right.
You don't have to own an art gallery to be an agent of art. So whether that is within your company, within your home, or just going and just supporting the arts. I think that's a huge piece to it. So we almost need a seminar on how to be an agent.
Yeah, I think so, because luckily the business community is coming around to the fact that you need to create a sense of place in your community to attract these skilled and talented workers. It's a very big topic. What helps do that? Creative people. And we have them, and every community has them. It's not like Des Moines has more than anybody else. It's just that we're activating them. And so we're doing our part to activate them and show off, here's a resource, take your pick. We have to then create the other resources around, to really take advantage of that. They're creating a great sense of place for our community, makes it really attractive. I mean, people love having unique places to show up. I mean, just talk about the skate park. I mean, God, that's amazing. It's a sense of space, a place, and then they feel more connected with. And hopefully Mainframe can help convey that too. This is very unique. Let's take pride and ownership in our artists by welcoming them in to our world in a lot of different ways. They're just underutilized. There's a resource.
Yep. Well, okay. So to wrap up the conversation, I want to, if you guys could each speak to the artists and the creatives listening, what's final advice that you would give to them as they're either getting started, so maybe they're emerging, maybe they just landed in Des Moines or even outside Des Moines they're listening, or even to, someone who's been doing it their whole career. What's your advice or
can I start?
Tips, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was going to go.
Honestly, I feel the biggest advice, and there's a lot of advice I could give. I think not being shy about asking. And what that means is not just asking for money or for partnership, but to be curious about what other people are doing and who you might want to connect with, either creatively or because you're inspired by something that they're doing, whether it be a social practice or a leadership practice or a business practice. I'm still very surprised that, well, let me start this way. About 10 years ago, I started just reaching out to people that I thought were doing great work, either in the arts field or in other fields, just to set up meetings to talk to them about their work, to learn more about who they are, to talk about what drives our research practice or our creative practice or whatever it was. And I feel like those specific connections have been so meaningful to me, my work. And I've also been so, still to this day, surprised when I do get responses from people who are doing really amazing things, and to be able to generate my own network from a space of values and a space of curiosity. And whether I'm teaching, grad students or teaching artists or talking to, friends or family, that so often they're very surprised. I give them this advice all the time, always surprised that, oh, I got an email back from so-and-so and we're having coffee. I'm like, great, wonderful. Like, there's people who do their work well, want to see other people do work well. They want to be connected. They want to help provide this more vibrant ecosystem, and that to not feel like you're doing it all by yourself, that you're doing it within a space of community, that you're doing it in a space of mutual support. And I believe that there are a lot of people who don't know that or don't understand that. And so I would encourage people to, Google people, look them up, get their contact information, reach out to yourself, start building this network, and start understanding that you do have support out there. There are people who want to be supportive to you, but sometimes you need to find them yourself. And so I think that would be a big one.
Yeah, awesome. That's good. Yes, connection. Come on, that's what the world goes around, right? It keeps us connected to one another and why we're here. And to that point, I think, artists following the passion, take time to really tap into that. What is your passion, and follow it and have confidence in it. Having joy, passion, and vision lead your way is never going to steer you wrong. And I think artists have a lot to teach us about that. And it's really, I think they are so courageous to do these wild things, parents with the kids that go to art school, like, I don't understand what they're doing. They're never going to make a living. You know what? I think they're exemplary, examples of what we should all be doing, is following the passion that comes from our core. It's so authentic. It's so needed in our community, in our society. It helps us connect with one another in a more authentic way. So I would tell creatives to keep on keeping on. And there are people out there that really value you, and it's going to happen.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Siobhan.
Yeah.
Back here, I feel like we could have a whole nother episode or series. So I really appreciate your guys' time and being on here today.
Thank you for your interest. You're definitely an agent.
Thank you so much. It was so great to meet you both.